Hi, Debbie. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast.
So good to be here, Kalika.
You were on the podcast a couple of years ago, and just to reintroduce everyone to Debbie Goodman, she is the group CEO of Jack Hammer, which is an executive search firm, and she helps people create fantastic workplaces. But she's here to talk about something that's new, which is her latest book, The Living Room Leader: Leadership Lessons for a Hybrid Future, which is so apropos because as business leaders with the past couple of years, we have had quite a tricky time to lead. What do you think?
Yeah, it's been a pretty rough ride, I'd say. And I think as we're, into this next iteration of all the best laid plans that were set for even 2022, and leaders having to put so much of that on hold and reverse ideas and pause and rethink. It's just exhausting for a lot of people, really.
Yeah, but you have potentially some great solutions and strategies. And I mean, right now, everyone's seeing, they're talking about this great resignation, it's hard to find talent, but you came up, with some strategies for some of the entrepreneurs that are listening.
Well, it's definitely not the silver bullet strategy, quick fix. And a lot of what I speak about really, and what I write about in The Living Room Leader, is a lot of it is just basic principles, but we've had to just have a laser focus on some of the things that really matter. In certain markets, you can get away with, not necessarily paying attention to culture and what motivates people and how to look after them and their mental well-being and their connection with one another and the organization. In the past, that would have been a nice to have. We'll do this culture thing on the side, but actually what we're after is productivity and profit and driving growth. And I think what COVID has done is really catalyze this necessity for organizations to integrate the human element and the business element, and really recognize that unless you have a business without people entirely, and there are a few out there, your people are your business in a very big way or a smaller way, and there's just no ignoring the people issues. And I don't want to use issues like, what's such people issues, but if you don't start paying attention, as we've seen, people are fatigued and leaders are fatigued. I presented at the Pepperdine Business School a short while ago. It was my first in-person keynote in 2 years. And I went around the room and I said to them, guys, tell me, what are the leadership qualities that come to mind when you think about what should a leader be? There were, 100 students in the class, and everybody had something else to say about what they thought were the top key qualities of a leader. And I said to them, these are the expectations that everybody has around what the leader is supposed to deliver. And I want you to remember something. Leaders are human too. And leaders are fallible. And leaders are going through their own huge challenges, and they do not have the answers. They're grappling with the answers, but there are just so many expectations on what your boss or your leader or the founder of a business is going to be able to do. And the reality is, none of us really know what's around the corner, right? We've been shown that over and over the last couple of years.
It's certainly been a roller coaster, that's for sure. Lots of ups and downs. But as most entrepreneurs know, that we have to be able to, pull up our rain boots and dance in the rain and also maybe rejoice as well at the same time. It's definitely has been challenging. And in your book, you talk about some key trends of what you see. You had already mentioned, a spotlight on mental and emotional health. Mm-hmm. What else do you see that we need not be seeing?
Well, I don't know that anything I'm going to say now is going to be entirely, oh my goodness, where did that come from? We're all reading about it, and there's a lot of thematic flow-throughs. But firstly, one of the key things to recognize is that we're in an era of an expectation around hyper-personalization. And just as customers, we expect things to be we expect to be serviced and marketed to and cared for as unique individuals based on the data that you may have about me, as employees and as members of a workforce in any capacity. People want an individualized, personalized experience. And there was this period during the early days of lockdown and shelter in place, etc., where there was a tremendous amount of flexibility. Everybody was flying by the seat of their pants. It was just, let's figure this out all together, and we will really extend ourselves to make things work for the individuals. And there was this fanatical almost spotlight on this crisis situation that we were all in globally. And organizations really went the extra mile in terms of making sure that their people were okay, that they were safe, that they were able to work, that they could be semi or hopefully quite productive. And there was a lot of latitude given. But that took a lot of effort, and it was in some cases a little costly, and in some cases not very efficient. And in terms of a long-term strategy, a lot of leaders were not really well equipped to lead the way that they wanted to or were used to. In the previous way of, people come to the office and you see what they're doing, and you can check who's in and who's out, and you can, walk into people's offices, and there was this different way of being. And so leaders didn't get the crash course in how to lead remotely 101 over a weekend. And it was a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, and a lot of the things that we were used to doing together that were just so much easier and still are, collaboration and strategy sessions, motivating people, that's hard to do remotely. But people, and I don't want to say all people, there were some that really struggled and hated the remote working, but there were many, many more that found a new balance and found a new flexibility and found a new way of living because it was over such an extended period, and are reluctant to go back to the things that they were forced to walk away from that were not great. The commute, the specific office hours, the random in-person meetings. There were many sort of policies that so many people were just so glad to not have to deal with. And then they embraced new ways of working and living that they want to retain. And there's this definite overwhelming sense that what was is never going to be again. This has been the biggest global change in the way in which we work since the Industrial Revolution, really. If you think about it, the Industrial Revolution was the first time we gathered en masse in big factories and warehouses, and where there was this lots of people working together in this kind of office type environment or warehouse or type environment with managers and supervisors and shop floor people. And we haven't really needed to re-examine that for many decades until now. And in this re-examination, there's a lot that we can take from what we've all experienced and take this into the future. And so this hope and expectation and desire for individuals to say, I matter, and I want a work situation that works for me, is what I mean by hyper-personalization. As much of a headache as that is for everybody. And so that's one of the key trends that we're all faced with, and it's a real challenge. I spoke to a CEO of a Fortune 500 company recently. He said, getting people out of the office was a piece of cake. Trying to get them back in some form or another, that's so, almost impossible right now.
Yeah, like people are just resigning left and right, because as soon as they hear that everyone has to go back full time, they're like, I'm tapping out, I'm checking out, see you later.
Yeah, I actually attended a session with Seth Godin a couple of weeks ago around the Great Resignation. He's just one of my leadership gurus, actually, and he had some great insights. And, it's not a one-dimensional thing, this Great Resignation. We've got the beautiful soundbite now, catch-all phrase. It's multifaceted. And part of it is this prescriptive, any kind of prescriptive requirement to be full-time in office is definitely a cause for people to say no. I've definitely seen in our leadership hiring with Jack Hammer that when you present a career opportunity to somebody and they ask what the in-office requirements are, and you say, well, it's 2 days a week or 3 days a week or all in, or they're often reluctant and they'll pass up on an offer, even if it's a good financial offer at a great company, if there's quite stringent prescriptive in-office requirements. So that is one thing. But there's something else. There's the why are people leaving? Well, we know why people stay. People stay in an organization because they're well looked after financially, that's one thing. But beyond that, they stay in an organization because they feel connected to their boss and they feel connected to the work that they do in relation to the impact that it has in the world. So they feel that their work has meaning. They feel that there's purpose in what they're doing. And over the last 2 years, that glue, that adhesive, the connection to boss and colleagues, that's been really hard to attain. And for a lot of people, they've just been isolated or they're not feeling very well connected, that the work that they do actually has meaning. Overlay all of that with just absolute fatigue, maybe a toxic work environment, the mundaneness of working the way that we've been doing, stresses in coming from all fronts. The novelty factor of a new career opportunity, somebody who just says, hey, you want to come and work for us? Just the novelty factor alone is a good reason for people to leave. The other important part, though, is people aren't just leaving to go and work in new jobs. They're leaving to just leave, to reevaluate, to rethink their lives. There's the other sound bite is the Great Resignation. There's also the Great Reevaluation, because it's given people a chance to actually question, what on earth am I doing here? And why? And what's the purpose for all of this? And for many people, they've realized that the work that they do in the environments that they're in is just not giving them the satisfaction and gratification that makes it worthwhile. And so they're taking a bit of time out.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're finally getting off the hamster wheel, as we all did, of doing business the same way over and over again, and then just like, oh wow, this is what it feels like not to be on a hamster wheel. You mean I can actually go take a walk before I go to the office? I can go make my own, lunch, at home. I can go pick up my daughter from school because it's right around the corner. It's definitely a breath of fresh air for sure.
It is, and the thing is that there are also many companies out there, particularly entrepreneurial businesses that are not very corporatized or institutionalized, where they've been able to be very nimble and adjust, and where there's been a very big emphasis on culture and values and connection and keeping people truly engaged and cared for, where there's an authenticity around the empathy and the loyalty and the love. And I see many organizations that are really geared around these ideas, where people know that they're onto such a good thing, and so they stay. They stay because it's rare and they know it's rare. And you can't really force that. You can't, let's get somebody to come and do a workshop with us and try and give us an injection of love and loyalty. You can't do that from the outside. It has to come from the inside, and it usually comes from leadership or people who are influential, usually in the senior levels of a company, where they go, hey, this is really important to us, and we are going to create and co-create an amazing work environment where people can thrive. And then that's sort of embedded in the nature of companies like that. And we've read all the case studies about companies that are, that have such a great company culture. And not to downplay the idea of toxic positivity, because that's a thing too. I'm not speaking about that. I'm just speaking about places where people feel seen and heard and well looked after. And where organizations have that, people don't leave. They don't resign. Or maybe they do, but it's such a small percentage.
So you work with a lot of companies through Jackhammer. What have you seen leaders do well? You said that they uncovered innovative ways of managing teams. Do you have any examples?
So there are lots of examples, but I'll speak about looking after people's mental well-being, because we hear about the burnout and we hear about the stress and we hear about the anxiety, and for some people at the leadership levels it's like, oh come on, just get over it. The reality is that people are burnt out and they're not very robust, and there's been just this ongoing perpetual sort of survival mode, which is what happens when people are in burnout. And so what I've seen some companies do really well is provide wellness benefits that are very geared to individuals. So we've heard about corporate wellness programs for a very long time, and that's one thing. But what I mean is companies who actually are looking more directly after people's mental health. And that's a hard thing to do, actually. It's hard because people are often very reluctant. People who are suffering from mental stress in any way are often very reluctant to put their hand up and say, listen, I'm suffering from depression, or I've got real burnout, or I'm dealing with anxiety. They are really concerned that they're going to be judged, that it's going to impact the way they're perceived. Whereas if they say, listen, I've got a really sore back, or I broke my leg, or I've got a physical ailment, no problem. Everybody understands that. So first of all, to create an environment where people are willing to say, yeah, I could really do with some therapy, or I would really benefit from some psychological counseling, is very hard. And I know this because I tried this with my own company. At the beginning of last year, 2021, I said to everybody, guys, I have a therapist, I have a business coach, I've got a whole village of people helping me cope. It may look to the outside world that I'm doing this really well, but actually I've got my support team, because in order to perform at my fullest, I can't do this on my own. I'm under the same or more stress than everybody else. So I started encouraging people to reach out. And so I said to them, I'm going to pay, Jackhammer, we're going to pay for a therapist or therapeutic counseling, whatever you need throughout this year. All you need to do is just let us know that you're interested, and either we can find a therapist for you or you can find somebody, and we'll keep it confidential, we'll figure out the payment. And I thought everybody would just rush to this great opportunity, and was very surprised to discover that nobody signed up, like zero. And I had to continue to present this to my team periodically, again 2 months later, and again 2 months later after that. After 2 months, there were 1 or 2 people who said, okay, we'll try. And by the end of the year, I still had a few of my team outstanding, and I said, guys, here's the budget, use it or lose it. I'm paying, it's on me, this is it. And so finally, all of the whole team was signed up in one way or another. And what was probably the most gratifying experience was, and we're an all-female team except for one. We've got one man on the team, quite a unique being he is, and he's an African male, and African as in South African, and it's very, culturally, very hard for an African male to even talk about such a thing.
There's a stigma, right?
Right, absolutely. And we were at our company gathering, and all of a sudden in conversation he started talking about his therapist, and I was like, yes, okay. And so we'd managed over a year to destigmatize, to normalize, to model, to continue to offer this benefit that has been the single best benefit that anybody in the team has ever had. You can offer the yoga sessions and the massages and the pizza nights
and your dry cleaning.
Exactly. The mental health.
Here's your house cleaner.
Right. Is the one that
let me pay for your mobile phone, which you should be doing anyway.
Right. So that's just one example. I've seen other companies where they offer like an employee wallet, and they say, here's some of the things that we offer as part of this mental well-being package, and you choose how you're going to use the spend. And then once again, people feel like they've got some agency, they're not forced into something that they don't want, and then they've got a lot more autonomy to make decisions around how they want to use that. But if I just have to say, shine a spotlight on creating environments of real care for humans, a focus on that. I've seen many organizations globally really do that, and it's such a huge thing for people.
I've been hearing a lot of HR people looking for people to speak on psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two keywords that a lot of HR professionals are looking for in order for people to feel okay with sharing their ideas. Or have you heard anything about that, like where people feel that they're included in the conversation, or is that a totally different topic?
No, it's part of the same conversation. I think if it was Chip Conley actually, who wrote a book a while back called Peak Performance, where he actually looks at the levels of an organization, and he compares it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which at the very base level is all about safety and security. And there are many other leadership models, but many of them actually will also, Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of leadership. At the base level, where there's safety and trust, you can pretty much do anything. And this idea that people would feel safe physically and emotionally, where there's a lot of talk about toxicity in organizations, and both, we obviously know about sexual abuse, but that aside, just bullying and, diminishing people and treating people badly, the idea that people would be able to feel both emotionally and physically safe in an organization has never really been top of conversation, but it has become that. That's where we are now. And so it may feel like, oh my goodness, we've got all these fragile people. I don't necessarily think it's fragility. I think it's just all of a sudden an awareness and a permission for people to say certain things are not okay anymore. Just as we've seen with so many other boundaries that have risen to the fore, this is not okay anymore. And that relates back to the Great Resignation. A lot of people are saying, this is not okay anymore for me. I don't want to tolerate this anymore. In our work as executive search professionals, we're interviewing leaders all over the world, and it's interesting to encounter people who've had some kind of corporate scarring, where their work environments have been so challenging, problematic, and they leave real lasting wounds. And it's not only leaders, it's people at all levels of the organization, where they become emotionally scarred when they're in workplaces that are toxic or unhealthy or abusive. And I don't think it's that people are fragile. I think it's that people are saying this is not okay.
Yeah, and it's not okay. I remember one of my employees told me that in her last job, she was, she had given birth, and she had some breast milk, in the fridge. And she was written up for that. She was written up. She was there at work full time, and she was written up for having, God forbid, a natural human part of your, in the fridge.
Bizarre. In our culture document, we actually make mention of the fact that because we're almost an all-female team, there's almost always somebody who is either on maternity leave or about to go on maternity leave. And so as a result, back in the day when we used to be in office, there was always breast milk in the fridge. It's like, just don't touch the breast milk section.
It.
Totally.
Yeah. We have a whole refrigerator just for that.
Yeah, so I was actually speaking to somebody yesterday just around, and I know we're switching around here around a couple of topics, but they're interrelated. Just because there are female leaders in an organization doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have this culture of empathy and caring and, let's all be nurturing, mothering women around the work environment. Not at all. These qualities are not gender specific, but what is definitely an important thing to note is that where there are gender diverse leadership teams, and particularly where there are gender diverse engineering teams, those organizations become real talent magnets for other gender diverse professionals. So as we know, in our world, which is the entrepreneur world, which is many companies are tech related and rely on tech talent for their growth. And one of the biggest areas of demand is engineering talent. And many companies really do want to make sure that they've got diverse engineering teams, not just everywhere, not just the marketing and the HR team. And we're starting to see data that where you have either the founder is a female entrepreneur or you have a female head of engineering, you're much more likely to be able to attract additional female talent. So just that's another plug for hiring for diversity in and amongst this conversation, because diversity is obviously center front in the people agenda. I don't think I need to really go into too much detail around the why. We all should by now know the why. But there's a new lens, and this is something that I speak about in the book. There's a new lens to inclusion and exclusion that is starting to happen as we emerge into a hybrid workplace. And the hybrid workplace is going to consist of some people who choose to be in office and other people who choose to be out of office, and some people and there may or may not be synchronous times in office. It may not be, okay, yeah, we're all in on a certain day and we're all out on a certain day. And we also do know from data that more often it's going to be the leaders and the managers who are likely to be in the office. They are very much more inclined to want to be in person. This is just data that we're gathering. And so the inclusion exclusion variable that I'm referring to is in person, there are micro decisions and big decisions that get made almost unconsciously. You pass somebody in the office, you walk into the office and you ask a question. Won't you just come here? We need to just talk this through. And so the conversations that were happening consistently, synchronously, remotely, are not going to be happening quite like that anymore. There's going to be a lot of decision making happening wherever the power seat is. Now, if that power seat is still back home, it might not be quite as radical as what I'm suggesting. But the moment you have the more influential people in the organization in office, decision making, big and small decision making, the many micro decisions that happen, the thinking, the carrying people along, will be centered around the force of those individuals, resulting in those who are working remotely either not being up to speed, not knowing where things are, not participating or being given the opportunity to participate, not being seen necessarily in the way that they would want to be seen, and this inclusion exclusion resulting in inequality and inequity in kind of unconsciously. Basically, I'm just saying, hey guys, of all the things that you may be thinking about, please think about this. Please think about how to address this issue that is going to happen and is already happening. And if you don't figure out some strategies to make sure that this isn't going to, that people who choose to be working out of the office or in the office, where that may be, that they're not disadvantaged because of their choices, things are going to blow up. So it's a different lens to a conversation around inclusion and connection and being part of things and belonging that I highlight and that I'm really encouraging people to think about.
Yeah, because as leaders, we certainly do not want to unintentionally penalize remote workers, because they themselves provide value. And I'm so glad that you brought it up, that it is subconscious, that we have to be aware that, oh, okay, I'm going to give this promotion to Sally because I just see her all the time. She's top of mind, right?
Right. I was chatting to somebody else, one of my other colleagues in the ed tech sector a couple of weeks ago, and we all speak about DEI, and he said, well, we call it DEI-B, and the B is for belonging. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I was like, yes, of course. what's the DEI for unless, the B is the outcome. That's what we want. We want people to feel belonging, that we want them to feel connected, we want them to feel included. We all want to feel that belonging. And so we could all have these fabulous diversity programs, but if there isn't the feeling of belonging as the outcome, it's meaningless. So I just love that. I was like, yes, of course. It should be called DEIB everywhere. I'm calling it DEIB
I love
everywhere.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yes, belonging has to be the invisible thread, the invisible, like you said, the glue that keeps us all together and aligned, with a purpose. You also talk about the trend of, social impact being really crucial as a key differentiator for growth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I kind of made a lot of reference to that idea that people want to feel like the work that they do matters. And for organizations that have got some kind of social impact or societal, benefit, I'm not just talking about NGOs, I'm talking about any organization that really can show that that the work that they do has meaning in the world. It has a competitive edge, particularly with Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, right? Who are who are just absolutely hyper-conscious about the planet, about everything related to doing good business in the world. And so it matters to them that the company that they work for is adding value, contributing, or positively impacting the world in some way. And so, if there's a company that's focusing on women empowerment or climate change, it's kind of easy to make that correlation. But as I'll say in the book, if you happen to be manufacturing pillowcases, that you shouldn't have to choose from the bottom of the barrel of talent. But then you've got to work a little harder to help your employees feel like they're still adding value to the world. And so then it's about aligning with good causes. It's then about making sure that people can feel that their work is contributing to society. So are there engagement programs in the community? Is there a philanthropic entity that benefits from profits? Can people feel like they're being connected, that they personally have a stake in the positive work that they are doing? And so for companies to help individuals trace the line between the work they do and the positive impact in the world, that's a really important thing for companies to do, particularly if the business or organization is not a very obviously socially impactful organization.
Yeah, well, research shows that the most purpose-driven companies are also the most profitable. They find a way to drive that point home as well, too.
Yeah, so we all know about the amazing big brands out there that are so purpose-driven, and everybody wants to be the next Patagonia. But all of us even in our small and medium-sized businesses can figure out how to incorporate the idea around purpose into what we do. The main thing, though, is that it's authentic and it's not just a band-aid or a little bit of frilly makeup, because people are smart and they will pierce that veil quite quickly. There's Daniel Pink's book. He's another one of my favorites, Drive. He speaks about the way in which you have happy, functional, engaged employees being 3 factors: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy, people need to feel like they have some kind of agency over the work that they do. And I think by and large, that's, COVID did us a huge favor with regard to that. Many more people have much more agency or autonomy than they used to have. Mastery, people need to feel like they are making progress, that the work that they do is, that they're working towards a goal, and that they're getting feedback around becoming more masterful at the work that they do. And then purpose, they want to feel like the work that they do has meaning, that they add value, that the work that they do is valuable. I mean, there's nothing more destroying than having employees work on a project and give up their weekend hours and pour their heart and soul into something that just gets cut or goes nowhere, it's soul destroying for people. That being said, there are times that projects just don't materialize. There are times when the thing that you're working on just gets stalled. Or how do people feel nevertheless, even if the outcome isn't there, that the work that they do has meaning and that they're valuable? That's what people want, really. It's kind of simple, but kind of hard.
Yeah, these are amazing reminders, just like, make sure you drink water. It's like we have to remember this. Remember that people want mastery, so give them the time. My company, one of our employees is going to be going part-time, but she's going to be paid full-time so that she can actually go and learn. She was telling me that she wanted to learn some additional programming languages and some project management, take some project management classes, and we're going to allow her to do that. But she had to be the one to come to me, but as an employer, wouldn't it have been great to have put it down as one of the things that we should be reaching for, continuous learning, because you're right, everyone wants that ability to master something. Beautiful.
I believe so. And look, not everybody out there wants to have the responsibility or can take a lot on. I mean, some people are really tapped out in terms of their capacity and their resilience. And I think, just speaking to our entrepreneur community, we're wired to continually want to learn and grow, and I think there's almost an expectation that the rest of the world would want to do that too. That's not always the case, but
That's true.
But given the chance, it's amazing how people jump at opportunity. The right people jump at opportunity. I mean, one of the things I'm most excited about right now is at the end of last year, I set up a blockchain crypto division as part of Jack Hammer. It's called On the Block, and we help crypto, blockchain, and NFT companies with their leadership hiring. And this is not just a new division, it's an entirely new language. It's an entirely new way of working. And I've been super excited about this world for a while and started educating myself, but now I'm trying to leverage my existing team to start working on projects, and was a little tentative about saying, hey guys, there's this opportunity now, whoever wants to step up can. And the number of hands that were raised and the amount of self-learning that people are doing, because they are equally so excited to be part of something new that's growing, that is this new world. I've been blown away by how everybody's just going, yes, me, even though it's so foreign to many people. So I think we sometimes, on the one hand, expect that everybody's going to want to jump. Not everybody will jump at new opportunities. And on the other, we sometimes hold back on offering. And many more people than one thinks are equally excited and open to trying new things.
And I think it is much easier if you've created a culture of potential learning and, like you were saying earlier, hyper personalization. So if they don't want to do it, then they don't have to do it. It's sort of like this customized way of being in the office, and it allows them to dismantle their current structures of knowing and try something new. Like, who wouldn't want that? And you're piquing their curiosity, you're piquing their interest. Because, as entrepreneurs, especially in EO, one of the things, one of our values is thirst for learning, thirst for growing. And sometimes we forget that our employees also want the same thing as well, too.
Yeah.
Well, some of them.
Yeah, right. Some of them. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a lot of talking from me.
So, what are you looking forward to in 2022? That went fast, huh?
Wow.
It's January. Wow.
So Jack Hammer started, so my company Jack Hammer, which I've been running for over 20 years, so it's a lot longer than the lifespan of most entrepreneurs, started out as a business in South Africa, based in Cape Town, which is far away from everything. And we were a boutique search firm that over the years then became the largest executive search boutique on the continent of Africa. So in all the main markets in Africa, we expanded beyond South Africa and grew. And then when I moved to the US a few years ago, I hadn't really thought about starting all over again in the US. I was completely overwhelmed, frankly. And the idea of needing to break into a new market was just daunting. But COVID was another catalyst. And so over the last couple of years, I started sowing seeds in many different fields, and eventually some of them started to sprout. And so we now have these two new practice areas. The one in our Jackhammer USA business is growing madly, and we focus primarily on the ed tech sector. And so I'm very focused on building and growing that, and that's so exciting. And we used to work for many US edtech companies when they were opening in Africa, so it was a natural transition to working in the US for helping US-based companies find their leaders. And then on top of that, unexpectedly, as I made mention earlier, I set up this new subsidiary with a separate brand called On the Block, which is blockchain, crypto, and NFTs, and that has been an absolute mind blast. And so exciting, and drinking from a fire hose with regard to that, flying the plane, building the plane, doing all the things. And so I'm in build mode all over again. The Africa business, I have an amazing managing director. She runs that, and I've got a wonderful, very solid team that runs that business. So I now have the wonderful opportunity to do the thing that excites me most, which is growing and building. So I'm going to do two. I didn't expect to do two at the same time, but there you have it. At least I'm not writing a book this year.
Are you still dancing?
I am actually. I was actually at a ballet class earlier this morning, so yeah.
Oh, so that's keeping you sane.
Right.
Yeah.
And how are you? I mean, you're just into everything.
Good. Well, I had, it's my birthday next week, and I had to cancel I had set up all these like meditation tea ceremonies, for my birthday, like all these different ones, but because of Omicron, I had to cancel them, but it's okay. I'll eventually see people. I just came from Lake Shrine this morning, so you're in your ballet class, and I'm very much into my meditation. I went on a silent retreat in December, which was fantastic.
Was it amazing?
Really healing, and it's beautiful to be able to spend a lot of time, looking inward, rather than looking outward. So Debbie, what do you think about, there's a lot of aspiring women entrepreneurs that are also listening to this podcast besides entrepreneur members. What type of advice would you give them in this day and age, in 2022?
Yeah. There are different phases as you're building and growing your business, and there are times when you need to be in the trenches. You need to be digging the ditch and planting the seeds. And then the time comes where you need to recognize that it's time to get out of the ditch and out of the trench and step into your zone of excellence, which is your strategic lane. It is your build and grow lane. It's your creative zone, which is there because otherwise you wouldn't have started the thing in the first place. And knowing when it's the time to step out of the ditch and do your thing and work through others is really important. So it's where I am right now. I did so much in the ditch, trenching in the ditch last year. And then this year I was like, it's time to get out, take a shower, get rid of the dirt, and step into the zone that only I can be in, and have wonderful other people to do the other work that needs to be done now. I had an executive assistant, thank God. And so the amount of time that I now have to do the stuff that I need to do at this phase is just amazing. So for anybody who's listening, there are times you're going to need to be the one carrying the spade, and then times where you put it down and you step into a different gear. And good luck to everybody for 2022.
Thank you so much, Debbie. You are such an inspiration. Every single time you're there, your charisma just sort of just jumps out. And you are so filled with so much wisdom and strength, and you are just kicking ass. Just love it. I'm so inspired by you.
Thank you. It's always so lovely to talk to you, and I wish we could do this more often, and I hope we'll see you soon. That'll be really wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is The Living Room Leader, Leadership Lessons for a Hybrid Future. And how can people get in touch with you, Debbie?
Well, the book you can get on Amazon. And in touch with me, you can contact me through my personal website, which is debbiegoodmanleadership.com, or my Twitter, which is Deb Goodwoman, or LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm easy to find.
Great. So I'm hoping that we'll have more things to talk about maybe in the next year or so. Exciting things unfold for you with blockchain and maybe another book, inside of you. You're full of, you're just like me.
Time out.
Yeah.
Maybe not for the next couple of years.
Or we can just talk about dance,
Yeah, we can do that.
We can talk about some other things.
Yeah.
Talk about dance, talk about mindfulness.
Right.
Right. Thank you so much, Debbie.
And you too. Have a wonderful rest of the day and lovely weekend. And I hope to see you soon.